Hello, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending where you are. And welcome to this short webinar where I will be talking about leading high performance teams in the regulated environment. Today, we will look at the leadership question. How do we lead teams that perform well, move at the right pace, and still protect patient safety, product quality, and data integrity? In pharmaceutical work, performance is not just about being fast, busy, or efficient. A team can meet a deadline, but creates serious quality risk if the decision was poorly documented, if a concern was not escalated, or if people felt under pressure to work around the system. And the message I would like to convey today is simple and clear. That in a regulated environment, high performance and compliance quality are not separate items, they are connected. Strong leaders build daily routines that make quality visible. Strong leaders create a culture where people speak up early and openly. Decisions are risk-based and issues are closed properly rather than simply moved along the system. So as we go through the webinar, I will keep bringing this main message back to you and connecting it to the leadership behaviors. What do we ask in a huddle? How do we react when someone brings us bad news? How do we decide when to stop, escalate, or document things differently? Let's have a look at where our journey will take us today. So first, we will frame what high performance really means in a regulated pharmaceutical environment. This is an important step because many teams are measured heavily on the output, the deadlines, and the closure dates, but those measures are not really enough on their own. Second point is that we will look at how leaders make compliance visible in the daily work. We will translate the regulatory expectations into team routines such as briefs, huddles, debriefs, decision logs, and escalation points. The third point, we will focus on decision making, and in particular, we will look at how leaders make risk-based decisions under pressure, how they manage uncertainty, and how they encourage people to challenge decisions respectfully. And then finally, we will look at the key questions and takeaways. This is not intended to be a lecture on regulations for you. This is about a leadership, and this is for people who have to make decisions, that have to coach teams, and they have to protect quality outcomes in real time. So let's start with what a high-performing team looks like, or what's the definition of a high-performing team. In pharma, a team is high-performing only if its results stand up under quality, patient safety, and the regulatory scrutiny. A lot of the teams focus on the results, the KPIs, but of course, we need to focus on the scrutiny of the regulator in the equal measure to the result and the KPIs. That means the team does not just deliver the work, it delivers the work in a way that can be explained, it can be defended, supported by evidence, and improved where required. And here we've got 4 dimensions that we can explore. The first one is, of course, the patient protection. Patient impact must be the North Star for the decisions and escalation. That must be our first point. Even when the patient is not visible to the team, we must remember that the patient is still the reason that the system exists. The second dimension is the product quality. A high-performing team will protect the validated state, follows the controls, investigates deviations properly, and doesn't accept weak kappa just because the closure date is due. The third dimension is a reliable data. In a regulated environment, if the record is not accurate, attributable, and reviewable, then the organization cannot really confidently reconstruct what happened. So good decisions depend on good data. Good decisions can be done if you have good, solid data. And the fourth dimension, is learning and improving. High-performing teams learn through review, feedback, effectiveness checks, and management oversight. They don't simply repeat the same issue and call each recurrence a new problem. Now look at what the warning signs are on your right, on the slide. So we have fast decision with unclear rationale is one of the good examples. You've got good people working around weak systems. We have issues found late because the concerns were not voiced early enough. Or you have kappa closed before the effectiveness of that kappa is properly demonstrated. And these are not just compliance problems. They are in themselves leadership signals. They tell us that the team may be moving, but not necessarily learning. So the question should shift for the leadership from, did we hit the output, to a different question that should say, did we protect the patient quality and data while learning faster? Okay, so you can see the shift from did we hit the output to did we protect patients' quality and data? Now here on this slide, we can see the regulatory leadership framework that sits behind the topic. Regulators do not usually inspect leadership style directly when they come to your site. They do not walk in and say, show me your leadership model or show me how you lead your people, okay? Inspectors do see the effects of the leadership in the way the resources are provided, in the way the decisions are made, or the records maintained, the way the issues are escalated, how are the kappas handled, and is the management review performed? And of course, they can see it as well through the general behavior of people when they are on site. Some leaders or leaderships think that if they are not directly interviewed, then they are safe and everything is good. But this couldn't be further away from the truth. Your leadership style can be seen through your team and your system. So keep that in mind. ICHQ 10 gives us a strong foundation because it places management responsibility review, kappa, and continual improvement inside the pharmaceutical quality system. It becomes the quality system. ICHQ 9 brings the risk discipline. It reminds us that the risk decision should be science-based, the subjectivity must be managed, and the level of formality that we apply should match the level of the risk. When it comes to EU GMP Chapter 1, it is very clear that the senior management has the responsibility for the pharmaceutical quality system. Leadership may not be the ones handling the deviations themselves, but they are responsible to make sure that the people that do handle them do it properly every time. It also reinforces the need for the adequate resources, the clear responsibilities, quality risk management, root cause analysis, and CAPA. So all that in your chapter 1 of EU GMP. FDA, quality systems and data integrity expectation also point directly to leadership when it comes to FDA guidelines. They require suitable resources, just like EU GMP, reliable data, trained personnel, effective oversight, and a culture where problems are identified and corrected, rather than hidden and managed out of sight. For pharmacovigilance and clinical teams, the same principles apply. Safety escalation, QPPV authority or vendor oversight, and risk-based quality management all depend on the leadership behaviors. How is your leadership behaving? So to translate this into a task for the leaders now is how do I do that? So do not leave the guidance as words in a document or policy or the SOP only. Turn it into a visible team routines. A regulator may not inspect your style, but they will inspect the evidence of your leadership that your leadership creates. In this slide, we move from the idea of leadership into what it actually looks like in a day-to-day work. In a regulated environment, high performance is not created by one big leadership moment. It is created through small, repeated routines that help our team stay aligned and make good decisions and escalate issues early. So let's start with the first point, which is setting the priorities. Before any work begins, your team needs to be clear on the patient, product, and the data risks that matter most and what matters most on that day. Then you have your brief. The brief confirms the roles, your critical quality points, the known risks, and the escalation thresholds. So everyone knows who is responsible for what and what are the escalation thresholds. When something changes, we huddle. This is a short pause to update the risk picture and not a long meeting. Normally, the huddles happen every morning, and people will review what's happened to the day before and what are the priorities for the upcoming day. And then you have the decisions. So decisions should have a clear rationale, they should have a clear owner, and the right level of documentation. If the risk is increasing, we need to escalate. You need to make sure that you involve the correct people early and not after the issue has grown into huge proportions and it's a little bit too late to leave it at the level that it is. And afterwards, it's important to debrief. What we ask ourselves, what worked, what failed, what was detected late, what needs to change for next time. And then finally, you review your CAPAs, your metrics, and your management review. So you are learning, and your learning becomes the part of the system. And all these parts, they need to be documented. The key actions need to be documented. The key questions for leaders here is really simple. What would make us stop, escalate, or document differently today? And this question helps the team reduce ambiguity and make the weak signals visible a lot earlier than if you don't ask that question. There are 5 leadership practices that I would focus on and reinforce if in any regulated team, because even if your team is running well, you must keep learning and improving rather than falling back into a safe space and then in time losing control. So the first practice that I would focus on is clarifying the ownership. People need to know who owns the decision, who has the authority, who must be consulted, and who must be informed. Many quality issues become worse because everyone assumes that someone else has picked it up and someone else has passed the message on or escalated it. So clarify your ownership. Second practice is making sure that your risks surface early. And leaders can do this through briefs, through huddles, and through open questions. What they will do, they will make it normal to raise the weaker signals before they are confirmed as big problems. The third practice I would focus on is making decisions with a discipline. Not every decision needs the same level of formality, but the level of documentation and the escalation must fit that level of risk. A routine decision can be simple, and an elevated or critical decision needs more evidence, more challenging, and more visibility. But whatever level the decisions are, they all must be documented. But the level of formality depends on your risk. And then we have the fourth practice that I would focus on is to challenge with respect. People must be able to question assumptions, but that doesn't mean that you're going to lower your standards by any means. Okay, having the psychological safety is not about making everyone comfortable and not having any challenging conversation. It's actually quite the opposite, because it's about making it safe for everyone to raise a concern while still holding people accountable to act when that concern is raised and the actions are decided. The fifth practice is the importance of closing the loop. A regulated team, as you know, does not finish when the team meeting ends or management meeting ends or when the CAPA is typed into the system. The loop will finish for them when the action is effective, the owner has followed it through, and the management review has the visibility where needed. This is one of the most common gaps found during inspection, and that is that the loop is not closed. The CAPA effectiveness has not been reviewed, or the CAPA effectiveness has not even been set. So you can't even review, and you haven't got the tools to check whether your CAPA has been effective. Sometimes the CAPA doesn't even make it to completion because the team is set up that they raise a CAPA and that's where it stops, and it sits in the system for months, sometimes for years, until the inspectors find it. And this is how and why inspectors see leadership through evidence, because they see it in the records, they see it in the decisions that they are presented with, they see it in the escalation process, the quality of the CAPAs and the management review. Okay, so good leadership leaves a trail of good decisions and closed, completed loops. This is very important, what you see on this slide, which is quality culture, because it separates the psychological safety from a vague idea of being nice that I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. So high-performing regulated teams need two things at the same time, as you can see on the slide. They need speak-up safety and they need accountability. If accountability is high, but the speak-up safety is low, what we get is a fearful compliance. People may follow the rules on the surface, but they hide uncertainty and then cut corners without anyone knowing or seeing what's been done. And on surface, everything looks great. They avoid saying, I'm not sure, or I think something's not right here, because they fear the reaction that will come. Then, if your speak up safety is high, but the accountability is low, we get the comfort of speaking out, but without the standards. So what you will get then is people that talk about concerns, but nothing really gets converted into action because there's no accountability. And that can feel open, but it doesn't protect the patient or the product. If both are low, we get apathy or silence. Risks stay local, side conversations increase. An issue only becomes visible when it's already difficult to manage or highlighted by an inspection. What we should aim for, and the target is to be in the top right. So you have a high speak up and a high accountability. And that gives you the learning accountability, where people raise issues early and they own the response. They feel safe enough to speak up and they are clear enough about the standards to act upon and the responsibilities that they will have with that action. What moves us to that space is the leader behavior. The leaders that invite different opinions before closing a decision. The leaders that will ask for evidence and uncertainty. A leader that will welcome and appreciate the challenge and then agree the required action. Follow up on the owners and the dates of completion. A useful phrase you can take away for this is that you can use thank you for raising this, and now let's decide what this means for the patient, product, or the data risk. This sentence overall protects both the safety and the accountability part, because it says, excuse me, I want the concern, I want to hear what you've got to say, what your worries and concerns are, and I also expect a disciplined action. And of course, a good leader here will encourage suggestions for resolutions rather than making a decision on their own. And in that way, you then showing the value that you value your people's opinion. Now, let's have a look at how we make risk-based decision under pressure. When the teams are busy, there's always the danger that the decisions become either too informal or too bureaucratic. When it's too informal, it means the rationale is not clear, the right functions are not involved, or the record cannot be explained later. You haven't got the reasoning behind the decision. You just don't have enough information. When it's too bureaucratic, that means that the team over-processes a low-risk issue and slows down the work without really improving the quality. So they are not looking at their risk, and they are not doing it based on the level of risk and formality. So your ICH Q9 gives you a useful principle that it's important that we have that guidance, so let's use it. And that is that your level of effort the formality and documentation should be commensurate with the risk. So before every important team decisions, leaders should ask 4 key questions, okay? And the first one should be, what is the patient, product, and data risk if we are wrong with our decision? This prevents the discussion from becoming only operational preference. Second question should be, what evidence do we have and what is still uncertain? This is important because many poor decisions are made when you have still uncertainty hidden there, so you don't have all your facts, but you're rushing in to make a decision. A third question is, what level of documentation and escalation fit this particular risk? And this question helps the team distinguish a routine decision from an elevated or a critical one. And then the fourth decision is, who must we inform now and not later? Many escalations that I have seen when I worked with clients, they fail because the team waits until the issue is fully understood. But in our regulated work, some people need to know while you're still collecting your facts and further acts are emerging. They already need to be made aware. A routine decision may be low uncertainty and with a known process. An elevated decision may have a possible quality or data impact. And a critical decision may involve a patient, product, safety, or regulatory risk. So your leader's role is not to make every decision heavy. Your leader's role is to make the level of formality appropriate and defensible. Now, the language of the leaders is very important, and it matters because in the first 30 seconds after the bad news, it's critical what kind of questions and what kind of language your leadership uses. So if someone brings a concern to a leader and the first response is blame, irritation, or dismissal, the team will learn very quickly not to bring concerns early or at all to their leader. They may still comply formally, but they will become careful about what they say and when they say it. And in the worst cases, they will start cutting corners and hide the issues. There are some really simple phrases that can quickly change the team behavior in this respect. So, as I mentioned earlier, you invite the concern. So here you can ask, tell me what concerns you most in this case. Or are we assuming that, that this could be true? And these questions will make people feel more at ease to challenge what they already think they know or what they are assuming, and they will not feel that it sounds confrontational. Then you can use the test of the inspection view, which is I use a lot. If we have in a debate, I say, what would inspector ask or say if they saw this tomorrow? How would we defend this to an inspector? What evidence could we have or we have supporting our decision? And these questions move the conversation from the opinion to, do we have an evidence? Okay. To set the threshold. So you want to ask, what would make us stop and escalate and document this differently? Or who needs to know now? And these questions then make the steps explicit. here I want to talk about the traps that the leaders want to avoid. Asking why did someone do something before you have the facts and clear information can really sound like a blame, even though it's not meant as a blame. Rewarding the heroes who bypass the SOP will teach the team that shortcuts are acceptable as long as the results look good. Treating late escalation as only individual weakness ignores the possible system issues such as unclear thresholds or workload pressures. And closing the conversation without having the clear owner, due date, or a record means that the issue will very likely drift. So a better first response in when issues arise would be, thank you for raising this. Let us define the immediate quality risk, what we know, what we don't know, and who needs to be involved. That response is calm, it's structured, and it's inspectable. So let's bring what I spoke about today together into a key takeaways that you can take with you. So the first one is that the high performance in pharma means reliable outcomes under regulatory scrutiny. It's not simply speed, energy, or closure rate. It's a patient protection, the product quality, reliable data, and learning. Second takeaway is leadership is visible in our daily work, in our routines. If you have briefs, huddles, debriefs, and decisions and proper escalations, and they are part of your daily places, then your culture becomes real and tangible. Third is psychological safety works only when it's paired with clear accountability. We want people to raise concerns early, and we also want those concerns converted into action, ownership, and follow-up. A fourth takeaway is that the risk-based decision require evidence, proportional formality, and a documented rationale. So your question shouldn't be how much paperwork can we create? The question is, what level of formality does this particular risk require? And then you have the fifth takeaway, which is about CAPA, the management review, and a follow-up to turn culture into a measurable improvement. Without a follow-up, without a closure of the loop, your culture remains just a statement. With follow-up, it becomes a system. I would like you to reflect on that question at the bottom of the slide, and that would be, what is one team routine that you will take to strengthen your teamwork after this? It could be adding escalation thresholds to your daily huddle, or it could be asking for uncertainty before closing a decision, or it could be improving your CAPA review questions. So choose one, make it visible, make it count, and do it every day, even when no one is looking. To close this webinar, this webinar is part of the Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence, where we focus on practical and capability building trainings for regulated teams. The topic today, which is leading high performance teams in the regulated environment, is designed for pharmaceutical leaders who are responsible for decisions, escalation, quality culture, and team performance. At Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence, we offer a range of courses, bespoke, built, and practically focused, that would build on today's theme: quality culture and speaking up, and helping leaders to create psychological safety with a clear accountability, risk-based decision, help teams use evidence, proportional formality, and escalation triggers. If you found today's session useful, and if you would like more questions, or if you would like to explore the possibility of further training and a workshop support, please contact us through Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence or on LinkedIn or directly on email at anettajel@pqs.ltd. Thank you very much for your time today, and have a lovely rest of the week. Thank you.